Hey there, this is Kat Sancic, the lead boss with the Revenue Accelerator, and I have my guest today, Josh Koerpel. Now, no, he's not homeless. I haven't just picked him off the street. He has a very interesting background. Actually, he has a BA in Spanish and a master's degree in mechanical engineering, so he's kind of smart. He's also the co-founder and CEO of Firebuilders.io, which you guys are definitely going to want to go check out. He is previously a ship captain and Alaskan wilderness guide. Josh worked for years as a special projects, this is in quotes, mechanical designer for clients like Disney, Cirque du Soleil, and Metallica, because those things really go well together, only to begin building his own software solution and transitioning to B2B SaaS products because, it pays the bills real nice, and doing that full time on the road. And he does two things pretty much while he's doing that, which is riding across the country on a vintage BMW motorcycle, not too bad, and here we go, West Sail 32 cutter rigged sloop, which he's going to explain what the hell that means. So Josh, thanks for coming aboard and, taking a shower today.
Yes. Well, yes. And you're welcome to the first part. I have not taken a shower today, so I cannot claim that.
I was trying to give you props of some kind.
Luckily, I live by myself right now, so I don't need to shower for weeks.
No.
So yeah, it's great to be here. Thank you for that introduction. And yeah, coming at you from the sea.
Yes. So, you're living on a boat right now and you're doing a lot of stuff in terms of making room, which, there's so many analogies there for two other people that are going to join you on the boat. And it's kind of really akin to what a lot of business owners experience, which is there's a lot of clutter in our day, right? There's a lot of things that we hold on to, a lot of stuff around us. And a lot of times we have to get rid of it to make space to focus on the relationships, and see how I'm doing this, and the things that are most important to us. And that kind of led you into, building this app. So can you tell us about, like, one, why you're doing what you're doing, and two, a little bit more about kind of Firebuilders.io and how it actually helps people do more with less?
Yes. Well, why am I doing what I'm doing? Because I'm nuts. So
I mean, acceptance is the first step. So
that's right. That's right. I just have this inherent drive to explore the world, take photographs, experience life. I mean, essentially, all of this work that I have done for the app and with clients and the things that I've created, it's honestly just to support my travel habit. like, so yes, I basically, well, you touched on minimalism, and that's a really good starting point, because here on Albatross, it's a 32-foot boat, and we're looking at like maybe 250 square feet, something like that. So what I love about living on board, and I've lived on board now for a number of years, it's kind of you're forced to prioritize what is important. Uh, if you have a big mansion, you of course don't necessarily need, you could just get more stuff, and you acquire so much, just like Fight Club, right? Like, it's like the stuff owns you kind of thing. And that's incredibly true, but the kicker is that you don't realize that until two things happen. Either one, you have some crazy midlife crisis and you start to gain some perspective, or two, you have to move because you don't really
yeah.
realize how much you actually have until you have to actually move. That's what I like about the boat. I've been doing it ever since my 20s. I've lived and worked on the water. I worked in the tall ship world for a number of years. I got my captain's license. I was driving these big ships, and I liked the minimalist kind of lifestyle.
Yeah.
And just like you said, when you cut away all of the clutter, I feel like it gives you space to be way more creative, to come up with solutions that are more roundabout instead of incredibly routine and rote. And it just gives you a better perspective on life and how you want to conduct yourself and what you think is good versus bad. And especially nowadays in like social media world,
Yeah.
So there's a lot to it. Boats are happiness.
Well, I mean, there's something like that, right? There's always this aspirational thing that people are going towards. And I mean, there's two paths here that I kind of want to walk at the same time, but I really appreciate kind of what you're doing is one, you're living your message because so many people talk about prioritization and doing time management and, kind of stripping away the things and all this other stuff, but they don't actually do it. And so, I can appreciate you actually living your message and actually going through this process, iteratively, right? So you get to a point where you kind of slip out of the habit and you collect and you collect and you collect until you get to a point where technically you're moving because you're allowing two people to move in, right? And so you've got to rework your space. And a lot of times that's kind of, okay, now I'm bringing the past together. And where I wanted to go was this routine and roteness that you talked about, which is so many business owners get into this, you know, pattern and the pattern becomes boring. And so one of two things happens. Either you level up or you self-sabotage. So what would be your advice to people who in their business are in a routine, they're rote, they're stuck, right? They're not doing the thing that they know they should be.
Hmm. Well, I would, yeah, it's an interesting question. I honestly, I would start by saying that I think it is important to not necessarily invalidate the idea of a routine. It's not
Mm,
like I wouldn't, I wouldn't preach, hey, don't have any routine, completely wing it every morning
right.
kind of thing, right? There's utility in the routine for sure. There's like it makes sure that you get things done, that you need to get done. And sometimes a lot of those things are things that you don't necessarily want to do. So it forces you to do that. And you get
Mm,
into that routine and it helps. However, you're right in a sense that it's very easy to fall victim to stagnation essentially. And then when something happens in your life and that light bulb moment comes and you say, oh, I want to build this business, or I want to create something that's way outside of my knowledge zone, lo and behold, you've kind of forgotten how to create. You've
mm,
forgotten what it's like to be in a situation where you feel uncomfortable. And it's also there's some pain associated with it, like not physically, but I mean mentally. Um, Starting from scratch again, having to learn from the ground up is not something anyone wants to really go through. But
mm.
but you do it. You realize that it's a necessary thing, and that's that's where the fun lies. If you can find the enjoyment in the process of creating something new, then it doesn't matter where the end result is. Like you will feel fulfilled.
Right.
So
Well,
so
I
yeah.
mean, you kind of like outside of creating something new, it's the continuation of creating, right? So, we have different specialists in different fields, right? We're always taught niche down, specialize in a certain thing. And I know that there's a lot of people out there who, they've been doing the same thing for years, right? And it just at some point, it just feels like, how can you keep talking about the same thing over and over again in the different angles? So, I mean, what would be your advice when it comes to that creativity and connecting to it almost in a way? Like, that there's this like drive and eagerness and passion when you first start out, right? You're like, I'm going to do this, I'm going to take over the world. It's almost like akin to starting a new job when you're, in the corporate, right? Like you're just, everything's going to change and I'm going to rewrite the rules. And then you're there for a couple of years and it comes, the routine kind of sets in. And then it kind of, there's this like, it feels like sometimes this like disconnect between when you have this routine, the creativity kind of fizzles out. Like it's almost like an oxygen sucker from the room. But there are ways to activate both of them, meaning the routine can feed creativity, but I don't see a lot of people being able to tap into how to do that.
Hmm. Well, I feel like the how is completely dependent on your interests.
Mm-hmm.
Um, for me, I loved the water. I love the water still, and that that provides the balance for me. So I work really hard online, create these software products and work with people at a pretty high level, and that's like one side of the scale. And then the complete other side of the scale, like even this morning I was like knee deep in the bilge fixing the engine, changing oil, right? Servicing winches on deck. Like, it's very laborious physically. And for me, that's how I regain my sense of creativity while still staying sort of in a routine. It's like I just flip back and forth from red
Mm,
line to red line, and you end up kind of like settling somewhere in the middle, if you settle at all.
right.
And to me, that provides the balance that I'm looking for. So my advice to people would be to find whatever that is for you. Do something incredibly, like whatever your routine is that you feel like you're getting stuck in. Think of something else that interests you that's the almost polar opposite of that, and go do that for a little bit. Um, Expect that it's going to feel weird and it's going to feel different, but know that it's not bad. It's a good thing. It's a necessary thing. And see what that does to your mental state. See how kind of like
Mhm.
the clarity. Most of my great ideas, they don't come from when I'm like clicking away on my keyboard. They come from
Think
when I'm,
now, create now.
yeah, yeah. It's like they come when I'm, when I'm setting a headsel, or
Mhm.
I'm, I'm, I don't know.
Talking to someone else, just
Yeah,
about their stuff or something along the, yeah.
yeah, I'm like doing something completely different
Mm,
than work. And uh and then I just try to remember half of those ideas and then execute as much as possible. That's the other key, is like having the ideas is just, that's just fluff. Who cares? Everybody has ideas. If you are someone that knows how to tangibly execute ideas and bring something that doesn't exist into the world, know how to create it, uh, that's a special gift. And people like that, they, I feel like they tend to get farther in life because they're not afraid to take chances and build new things. and
mm,
and it all comes from that clarity of doing something completely different in your
yeah.
day.
There's so much mindset behind everything you've been sharing. And part of it is really, if you're not feeling, because routine, if you, and routine in terms of like where there's that no energy routine, right? Where you're feeling bored, is a place of lack, right? Where you're just not connected to the joy, the abundance that can be around you. And your suggestion of going and doing something that makes you, that taps into that joy, that taps you into that abundance, because that's a higher energy frequency, and then basically bringing that energy back into the other thing that you're were maybe less passionate about or more passionate about or can't find where the passion is, kind of helps raise both of those up so that they become more enjoyable.
Yeah, and I think it's real easy for people to say that. And it's been said, it's like, well, just find something that you enjoy doing and do it. And I think the biggest problem that people have is that they agree with that, but they just don't have the energy to do the thing that they want to do. Like maybe they loved painting or something as a kid, but after they get home from work, from their
Yeah.
job, and they eat dinner, like sitting down and pulling out a bunch of paintbrushes and putting on an old Bob Ross episode and painting a landscape is like the last thing that they want to do. They just don't have the energy to do it. And that's where you get this sort of like self-fulfilling
Yeah.
prophecy here. So to that end, I would say, you, to those that are listening, like, you have a lot more energy than you give yourself credit for.
Mm.
Um, and it's like what they say, and that you ever hung out with like Navy SEALs, uh,
Yeah, all the time.
well, they talk about, because of obviously what they do is incredibly strenuous, right? Pushes them to the brink
I mean,
of
the mental
breaking.
dexterity that those guys have is just
Yeah.
unmatched.
And what they say is, when you feel like you're done, when your brain is like, you're done, Josh, you're done, you're really only like 40% done. You
Mm.
have you have an overwhelming majority of energy left. It's just that very rarely are you ever pushed to tap into that. So I would say just keep that in mind next time you feel tired, and do it anyway.
Yeah.
Uh, so yeah.
Well, and there's also the prioritization that you were talking about at the beginning, which is if it's something that's important to you, and you do it first because it feeds you, you fill your cup, right? Then that's a way of being able to give yourself more energy to then continue to do the other things, so that even when you come home tired, you're like, hey, you know what? Not only did I do all this stuff I need to do during the day, but I already did the thing that fed me. And so now I can chill on the couch without kicking myself in the butt because now I haven't done the thing I love and I'm still, sitting here thinking I'm lazy or whatever it is.
Yeah. 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 So it's a thing. I mean, people, I feel that's one of the biggest lessons that the ocean, just being on the
Mm,
water, like taught me, is essentially that you've got to like toughen up. There is no, I mean, there's technically speaking, there's no couch on board the ship. It's not like you can just kick back and relax. If the weather is coming at you and
yeah.
and you're tired and you've been working all day on the boat,
Hmm.
whatever, and you need to change something because an imminent storm is approaching and stuff, you have to do it. There is no
You
choice.
find the energy. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And maybe that's one of the roots of the problem, is that people are given a choice. And when you're presented with a choice, like, I mean, it's much easier to just not do it than it is to do it.
Well, I
And
mean, humans tend to take the path of least resistance, right? I think it just becomes this, innate reactive state, which again, right there, you can't be creative when you're reactive. So when you're in a one down position, it's hard to get back into that place of abundance where you can be creative and that's where more can be achieved. And a lot of what your app does is kind of does this in a way, right? It's just it's that, what's that one next thing? Come on, what's one little thing that pushes you to that next level that expands your capacity versus continues to narrow it down? Because a lot of times that's what happens is we can do this as kids, right? We can do all these things, and then as we get older, our ability to do all the things starts getting narrower, narrower, narrower. And so so tell us a little bit more about firebuilders.io and how you help people accomplish these amazing feats that the concept really is they know what to do, but they're not doing it.
yeah, it's so, way back in the day, I heard, who Mel Robbins is,
Yes.
right? So I heard her talk in a podcast or something like that. She said something that was really struck a chord with me. I've never forgotten it. She talked about the fact that what kills people in the morning, and for those that are listening, if you've never heard, her thing is like, she makes herself count down from 5 to
Mm-hmm.
1, and then she does the thing. Like, even if she doesn't want to do it, she counts down and
Five,
just
four,
does
three,
it.
two, one,
Right.
go.
Yeah.
Yep.
um, but she says that the thing that kills you is, as you get older, right, you gain all of these new experiences and you try to filter them away and put them into your brain and remember them. And what happens is the minute that you're presented with a choice, right, you hesitate because you can see both sides of it. Like, you're like, well, let's say the painting thing again. I love to paint, but I also know from experience that I'm going to have to pull the paintbrushes out, and then I'm going to have to do it, and then I'm going to have to clean it. And most
Yep.
likely my husband's going to come home and he's going to start bitching and complaining about this and that. And we're going to get into a fight. Right. So there's a hesitation there, and you just never do it. You just never do it. Uh, and I always thought that Firebuilders was a great way, and part of the reason I built it in the way that I did was to eliminate people's tendency to hesitate.
Mm.
Because if they would wake up and say, well, I know exactly what my one thing is today. I don't even have to think about it. I know
Mm.
exactly what it is. If I do this thing, I can go to sleep feeling like I moved the mark a little bit. That's all they need. And they need that from somebody, like, there's an emotive power in an influence from who that message comes from. So to give you an example, there's like a bunch of accountability apps out there, right? Like Noom and all these other things helping you eat right. Like, the thing that a lot of those, if not all of them, are missing is that the messaging, the
Mm.
constant inspiration and the motivation and the stories and everything, they're coming from either a machine, a faceless company, or
Mm-hmm.
some coach that you've been assigned that you have no connection with
No
whatsoever,
emotional
right?
connection to whatsoever. Yeah.
So there's no emotive power in that. But on the flip side of that whole thing, take celebrity obsessions,
Mm.
right? people just get obsessed with celebrities and they will do whatever that celebrity does or tells them to do. Buy
Mhm.
this shirt, they'll buy the shirt. Drink this drink, they'll drink the drink.
Right.
Why is that? Well, man, there's an emotive power in who that message is coming from. If it was this faceless company that said, "Hey, drink our drink," you know, you might not be as like
Well, it's
willing
why
to
they do
jump up
celebrity
and do it.
endorsements,
Yeah,
Gatorade, Nike, everything like that. They
yeah,
reach down to someone who's, relatable, or at least, what is that called? People who are aspirational people.
yeah, exactly. Like, if you respect and admire them, you're going to
Mhm.
take their opinion and weigh it a little bit heavier.
Right.
So that's what I ended up building into Firebuilders, which is the kind of secret sauce to the whole thing. It is first and foremost an accountability app helping you stay on the straight and narrow and break your stuff down into your one thing and everything. But the real power in that is the fact that the messaging comes from somebody that can really make you do something, that
Mhm.
you want to essentially impress. Um, so that's how it all started. I didn't realize that at the very beginning, of course. I built this whole thing for my mother, and it turns out that I discovered all of this along the way. But she is an author, she was writing a book, and I helped her write every single day using this method. And at the very beginning, I like janked it together with just bits and bobs and different pieces of software and stuff. It was all super clunky. I had to figure out all of these
The
problems.
workarounds and the
Yeah,
integrations.
like, because anybody that's ever built anything knows that the actual solving of the problem is a very small percentage, like 10% of the entire solution.
Yeah.
The other 90% is figuring out all of the weird and interesting ways that people will misuse the tool that you have created, and you have to then create these sort of robust catch-alls, right? So that
Yeah,
the,
these
the whole thing doesn't.
anticipatory reactions that, yeah.
Yeah. So that was the process that I went through with my mom, and then other people started to use it, and then coaches saw it and were like, "Man,
Mm,
that's really cool, but I don't know who Josh is. None of this makes sense. I want to use it for my people, etc."
mhm.
Um, but in essence, it's just an intelligent messaging system. I mean,
Right.
that's at the end of the day, that's what it is.
Well, I mean, it's like, let me add a little more. It's because I've used it. I know that you have a free trial, which I would encourage anybody to go and leverage, because what I love about that is that you get to see whether it works for you or not. Because there's a lot of people who can come into something and say, oh, blah, 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 I can do it myself. And those are typically the people who still don't do the thing. Right. And
Sure.
so
Yeah.
it's really looking at it. And what's really also unique about yours, which I think is where a lot of people, especially app developers and people who work in the software field, because they don't have this characteristic, which is personality. I have worked and seen and interacted with a lot of engineers. And I mean, in this case, it's true. You're happy when they take a shower. I mean, I know you haven't, but there's this human connection, right? Because somebody who's always talking and thinking in ones and zeros tends to forget that there's a lot of space between those two numbers, where the human mind kind of lives and breathes and intertwines throughout those things. And part of what you do is you infuse personality, and it's not about shaming, right? So it's not about this, I'm going to guilt you, which is what a lot of, bro marketing and NLP manipulation kind of stuff gets you to do to buy. What you're doing is you're really tapping into the positive reinforcement. And this is all like, parental 101 that we should all know about.
Yeah.
But that positive reinforcement and leveraging that psychology and humor as a way to create an undertow that really kind of like a groundswell, right? So it really helps lift you up versus tearing you down. And then what does that do but make you not do the thing anyway?
Yeah, exactly. It's when you think about it, like kind of going back to the painting example, right? Um, when I first made Fire Builders, I didn't have this idea, and it kind of grew into it. But I said to myself, if this concept, right, works so well for inspiring people and
Mhm.
helping them through their day, and and has personality and has humor baked in. I mean, just like you're saying it, it's something that you look forward to opening the email and seeing what
You
the hell
want to
this person said,
experience it.
right?
Yeah.
Then you say to yourself, okay, well, what if I extrapolate this a little bit? What if I push the envelope, and if I was a painter and I wanted to learn how to paint, and I took an online course, or I wanted some accountability, who would I want accountability from?
Mhm.
Would I want accountability from the local sip and paint person, right? That has you drink wine and does like a paint by the numbers thing? No, I personally, I would want somebody like Bob Ross or Pablo Picasso. I
Mhm.
would want to know not just how they paint, but how they think and
Mhm.
how they approach problems. I want to get to the root of it all.
Mm.
And that's what essentially Firebuilders allows you to do. So you can create these environments with accountability where it really inspires people, just like you said, with positive reinforcement, instead of like Marine Corps boot camping them and making them feel horrible, right? With the intention of building them back up, but there's no need for that at this
Yeah.
point. It's like you can just make it interesting, and people will go through the process.
Yeah, I think a majority of people don't respond well to that process. Of course, there's plenty of people who do, and they look for that. But I think a majority of people who are needing and wanting accountability, that ends up being the problem, is that they don't want someone in their face. They don't want someone to make them feel bad. They already feel bad enough because they haven't done the thing. And that, it's just a love. It's not even tough love. It's just this, hey, like, let's just do this thing and let's try to figure out how to make it work together. Here's a tool, right? And a lot of it has to do with, because it's a tool, it really does help with reinforcing the confidence. Because I'm sure, like with your mom, it depended on her to continue to activate and to engage in order for it to build on itself. And so it does require a little bit of, it doesn't create a dependency, because that's what I see a lot of people trying to do too, is create a dependency. Either the coach or whatever it is always wants the person to be dependent on them so they keep buying, right?
You're
And this
gonna
is more
need me
so about,
forever, kind of
you're
thing.
right,
Yeah.
like you can never accomplish anything without me. Your
Yep.
money is mine. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I
This
love
is the
that about it.
opposite. You're exactly right. Like the idea is for you to gain your own sense of confidence that you can achieve this stuff, and it's not as hard as you think.
Right.
It just takes small, little, consistent steps, as opposed to trying to bust out like a
Right.
course or something in a weekend.
Which your app absolutely does, which is, it's not, hey, all right, so you want to write your book, all right, and tomorrow, have you written your book? And the next day, have you written your book? And the next day, have you written your book? Like, it's not that. It's about breaking things down into these digestible steps that you will activate. And there's all a bunch of like really interesting things that happen as part of the experience. So again, I would totally encourage people to go and download the free trial to really get an understanding as to how this creates empowerment within yourself.
Yeah, yeah, totally. And it's a really cool concept, because not just it's not just something like a very linear process. The
Mm.
one of the things that I really wanted, and I know that you can relate to this, like one of the things that I wanted to do in the very beginning stages here was to avoid this like repetition.
Mm.
Just like you said,
Now
hey,
I'm gonna
have
get
you
the
done
same
this
email
thing? Have you
tomorrow, and
done
then you
this
become
thing?
blind to it. Yeah.
Yeah, you get so desensitized to it, then you just stop opening the emails and stuff. And what also another kind of benefit and facet that makes Fire Builders unique is that it's adaptive. And and it took a while to figure out how to make this work. But it essentially changes the messaging, right, based on what the behavior of the person, what they do or they don't do, the messaging changes.
Right.
So it's appropriate at the right time for the right person, and that makes a huge difference. Because if I were to just to make a like active campaign email sequence and was like, day one, all right, send them this, day two, send them this, uh, just like you said, they're going to tune it out. um, but as soon as you make it apparent that it's like morphing to their behavior,
Yeah.
then you start to develop this like working relationship with them. It feels like they're cracking open their laptop in the morning and writing you like a personal message about your goal for the day.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and part of that is as much as you get out of it is as much as you put in. And so it's also creating a habit. Like there's just these multitudes of like benefits that are part of going through this process. It's not just, you get to do the thing. It's then you have the systems and the processes within yourself to be able to duplicate this again and again, because we all know that it's never just one project. It's never just one thing that is preventing you from achieving whatever and however you define success.
Yeah, totally. And for those that are listening and you're just like, oh man, this sounds kind of interesting. Like I can tell you that I've put like thousands of people through this now. And I can tell you the feeling that you get knowing that your coaching clients or consulting clients or whoever you're, sort of giving this accountability to, that they're getting things done. It's an incredibly fulfilling feeling, of course.
Yeah.
But there is a very, very real, tangible economic benefit here.
Yes.
I mean, on one hand, it's an accountability tool, but I mean, honestly, it's really a retention tool. It's like you spend all of this money as an entrepreneur, as a coach, somebody that provides services in some way, shape, or form. You spend all this money acquiring customers, and only a very small percentage of those people actually are return customers.
Yeah.
So the more that you can increase that percentage, the better. And the way that you do that is just by actually helping people. Like shocker, but it's like actually help people like get somewhere that they weren't there before, instead of just dumping an evergreen course on them and being like, good luck, thanks for the cash.
Yeah. I mean, it's being more responsible in terms of if you understand consumer behavior and you know that only 3% or something like, I mean, it's a really low number, 3% of people ever finish a course, then you're really actually not doing a good thing by just creating a course and creating a revenue stream for yourself. Because there is this concept in terms of an ascension ladder of if someone buys the course and actually implemented it, and you built the course knowing that if someone did everything, they would get results. Well, if that person got the results, why wouldn't they buy again and probably at the next level, right? To continue to build on that. But people just kind of do what you said, which is they get the money that they get, and then they just kind of keep going. And then they're doing all these efforts for each of the different revenue streams, instead of trying to create, putting a little bit of strategic effort into creating the ease. How can you help more people go to that next level of working with you? And what do they need from you in order to do that, versus trying to say it's all on them? No, if you're selling something, then you know that it's not converting for them the way that it needs to, the onus is on you as the producer, as the creator of the course or whatever it is that you're selling, to ensure that the majority of people are getting a positive result, or at least doing what you think you should be in order to support that.
Exactly. Like for those, people that don't think about that, their success will be short-lived. They will spend their energy constantly coming up with new ways to try and package the same thing and get people in and stuff. But at the end of the day, like eventually, just like if you're a bank robber, sooner or later you're going to get caught. Like sooner or later, you're just going to be ousted as somebody that isn't really helping anyone.
It doesn't deliver on their promises.
And doesn't deliver. And to be honest, like that's bad enough. But I mean, you if you're that person, you look in the mirror, like you will come to a point in your life where you say to yourself, what am I doing? Like, how am I contributing to anything good? And I think, of course there are people out there like that. But there's also a lot of good people, good coaches, people that really care. And that's who this is for. Those people that maybe started out small and really high touch and had this standard of care, raised the bar with what they were able to provide, made sure that they kept their name in good stature, right? And their promises in good stature. And then because those people are kind of few and far between,
right?
Then all of these people jump in and they're like, holy crap, like I want the same level of service. And now all of a sudden you have 200, 300 people that all want the same, and you just can't physically provide that. So that's really who Firebuilders is for. It really does handle the problem of scale.
Yeah.
So yeah, I encourage people to go check it out because it's pretty badass.
Yeah, and if the coaches and consultants, right, who've been listening to this as well, are people who have groups, who have, quantity and things like that, who are scaling, who are growing, and they're wanting to leverage this, part of what you do offer too is a licensing model, which allows you to leverage the software within your own group program, within your own business to support your clients. So it's not just, hey, go one off here, but then that gives you a level of control in terms of insight into what's going on, if there's something that's happening and all this other stuff. So there's that other level too that I think a lot of apps out there don't, use and support their people with, because it's kind of just this, I'm going to collect it myself, versus really supporting and enabling that coach, that consultant to be creating the same experience for their community versus sending their community out.
Yeah, exactly. It's like the difference between having your own, I don't know, like personal physical meetup versus a Facebook group, right? Facebook, you only reach a small percentage of people in your group anyway, unless you pay to play. But even when you do, it's like trying to teach somebody in a Marrakesh marketplace. It's like there's so many distractions and stuff. How do people
Like
even
one or
learn
two people are
anything?
going to be the people who are the closest right next to your mouth, are the people that are going to be able to hear you, but all the people standing around, what, huh? What'd she say? What'd
Yeah,
he say?
yeah, exactly. Like, and the thing is, just like you said, as a coach, as a business owner, your most valuable asset is your understanding of the insights of your buyers, of your clients, of your tribe. And that's another thing that we didn't even touch on, but one of the auxiliary benefits is that all of the feedback that you get, because Firebuilders, it creates this feedback loop. They respond to you, like they as in the people that are using
Consumer.
Firebuilders, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, they respond to the coach, then there's an automated adaptive response that goes back to them, and then they respond again, and you get all of these verbatim insights about what people want to do, what's stopping them, what their long-term goals are, and it's all written in their own words. And so you kind of, when you pull all that together, it is a fucking like Bible for your business. It tells you what to sell and how to sell it. There's
Talk
nothing
about
better.
market research, right? So one of the things that I know that I talk about a lot is you have to have your content, your marketing, all that stuff doesn't talk about what you think your clients need and want, but it has to tap into that inner monologue. And when you're working and capturing that information from people, when they're in that moment, when they're in that frustration or that win, that high, that low, wherever they're at, and they're literally typing their thoughts, that's like gold, because then you can really say, hey, when you feel insert that time where your client, your ideal client, right, making sure it's your ideal client, is said this, then they're going to have that feeling of they see me, they hear me, they know me, which then reinforces that connection that creates that desire to fulfill on the promise that you make yourself and to the other person.
Yep, totally agree. Totally agree. And what's so cool about what Firebuilders is that everything that you just said just happens automatically. It just happens. You just set it and forget it, sort of, in a way. And it really is. It really is. It has an immense effect on people. You'll see that if you offer it to 100 people, this accountability, a percentage of them, half of them or so, will take you up on it and participate. But you'll also see that the people that really do continue to use this, they are in it for the long haul. They love you. They will tell you exactly what they mean on a daily basis. And it's like, it's so much more potent information than a stupid survey, right? Or something like that, where you blast it out and you're like, hey, what do if I could help you with one thing, what would it be? Right? Of course, you'll get a few responses back, but it's not going to be as genuine or as granular or as sticky as the things that people say much more on a daily basis, that you can spot trends with. So that's also why I love Firebuilders, because it's like a marketing gold mine.
I mean, it's why Facebook is free. It's why LinkedIn is free unless you do the Sales Navigator stuff, right? Where they're collecting the data. That's where the value is for them. That's how we're paying them. That's what's so important, which is why doing your KPIs, understanding where your key performance indicators are great. You want to know how many leads you're generating, how many sales you're generating, all this, great stuff. But understanding the data from a human perspective in terms of their behavior, that's that next level that really helps you truly scale, and it helps you do it with more ease because you have the true insight versus, and it's also how you save time. You can't do this many market research calls on your own, getting, to that person's thoughts, whether they're filling it out at 12 o'clock in the morning or 3 p.m. in the afternoon. So it's just, there's so many benefits to leveraging this process, this system, this technology as part of your overall process to ensure that your clients and yourself are getting better and bigger results.
Yep, 100% agree.
Awesome.
Yeah, so who would have thought? It all started with my mom, and now it's just blown up into this huge thing.
Talk about having mommy issues.
Yep. I mean, I just wanted to automate my relationship with her, and
I know, right? I never wanted to engage ever again.
So yeah, it's been a hell of a trip, and just doing it, like, kind of looping back. I mean, doing it all from the road. That's how I was able to have these ideas and insights and stuff. Was I would have never figured any of this out, I don't think, if I was in an office every day clacking away at a keyboard.
Well, I mean, and you really dug it down and drilled it down to the essence of what's needed to be done versus, again, all this extra stuff. It's not, you need to be focused on, what font you're using in the book. It's, let's get the book written and then the things and the details. And this is beyond just, it's not just for people writing books. This is any place that accountability is needed when it comes to business and life. Right. So it works in both ways. I mean, it goes both ways.
Yeah.
But
no,
it's fantastic.
It's so true. It's like when people, because I do a lot of consulting and stuff for folks, like technical and creative consulting, and they'll come to you and be like, hey, I have this big idea, and I'm gonna get, I'm gonna do these webinars, and then like an opt-in thing, and then I'm gonna get like my first like 50 coaching clients, and then I'm gonna do this, and you have to stop them and be like, all right, first of all, do you have any coaching clients right now? No. Second, right, get one and prove it. Like, prove that you can get one person to pay you whatever, $2,000-$3,000 a month to coach them. So if you can do that, then we'll talk about the next level. But you would be, I mean, you wouldn't be surprised because you understand this world, but like most people, you'd be surprised they can't even get one. And they use those big numbers to sort of dilute the responsibility, right? Yeah.
Well, and it's because they were sold on this easy button strategy approach or whatever it was. And that, again, just right there is an indicator of, where it starts, where the rubber meets the road, where the friction starts happening. That's where most people bail. Right. And so when you have someone who has a proven concept, somebody who's been able to repeat success, that's what creates the consistency and predictability in revenues, but it's what creates predictability and, consistency in terms of all the areas of your life.
Yep. Yeah. Including on boats.
Right. So Josh, how can people get in touch with you? Because beyond just Firebuilders, there's all these other things that you're actively a part of and sharing in the world.
Well, best place to kind of like follow along with what I'm doing is joshkoerpel.com. So I have a blog there, and I send pictures and stuff. In fact, I used to just write emails to my family and friends just to let them know that I wasn't dead. I would do all these trips and stuff like that and just let them know I'm still alive. Here's some crazy adventures that happened. But you can actually sign up for that email, and I'm opening that up to people now too. So if you're curious about the trip and about all of these crazy sort of adventures that I get myself into, sign up, joshkoerpel.com. Otherwise, Facebook and Instagram is usually the best place. It's just Josh Koerpel, and on Instagram it is Saltwater CEO.
Nice. Awesome, Josh. Any parting words for, everyone listening today?
Yeah. My favorite quote of all time by a French sailor named Bernard Moitessier. A lot of you are probably in the midst of creating something new, and You can't get bogged down with not knowing how to do it and then letting that distract you into all of these other shiny objects. What's going to happen is that the work is going to teach you the work. It's my favorite quote of all time. The work teaches you the work. So expect that you're not going to know what you're doing. Do it anyway and figure it out along the way. You're going to be fine, right? But that's the only way you'll truly learn, aside from, paying some rando that you met on Fiverr, like $15,000 to build you some kind of funnel that isn't going to work.
Right. I mean, and you're not learning there in that instance at all. So.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. So you can't learn mastery unless you actually go and get your hands dirty and really figure it out. It's beyond the pages of a book. It's actually in doing the work. Yep. Josh, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it. Everybody, all of those links will be in the show notes for you to leverage. I definitely encourage you to go check it out. I'll also include the firebuilders.io, which that's the link, in the show notes as well for you to go check out and leverage as well. Josh, thanks again.
Yeah, thank you. This was awesome. Had such a good time. Thanks, Kat.
Thanks.